Welcome back. Today we're talking all about reading food labels for cholesterol management. Now, this is something I teach on a daily basis because when you go to the grocery store, you want to know how to choose foods that will help manage your cholesterol levels. So today I want to talk about 3 things to look at on the food label, where to find them, what they mean, why they're important. But then I also want to talk about 3 common mistakes or misconceptions people are looking at the food label that is not really helpful for cholesterol management. And then at the end, I'll go over one example just to show you and put it into practice. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Veronica. I'm the heart dietitian. I have over 10 years of experience working with individuals just like you who are interested in lowering their cholesterol or improving their heart health with nutrition. And I'm going to quickly link a video here talking about 4 strategies to help you lower your cholesterol using nutrition. But let's jump into reading food labels. So what's the first thing you should look at when you're reading food labels? It's not calories. Now, that is one of the common misconceptions, which we'll get to in a second. But the first thing I want you to look at is serving size. So why is serving size important? Well, it tells you what all of the nutrients and the amounts that are listed on the food table, what's the reference serving. So serving size is not what you need to eat. It's not portion size, right? It's not what's the recommended size of food that you need to consume. It is just a standard reference so that you know what all of these nutrients that are on the food label, what they're being compared to. So it's really important to know the serving size because, one, if you're eating double or triple the serving size, remember that's okay, that's not a problem, but you need to also double or triple the nutrients on the nutrition facts table to really understand how many nutrients you're consuming. So that's really important. And then the other thing is when you're comparing 2 products in the grocery store, right? You find that you're looking for spaghetti sauce and you're looking for a heart healthy spaghetti sauce. So you're comparing the 2, but one serving size is half a cup and the other is 1 cup. Well, you'd have to double the half a cup, all the nutrients on there to compare it properly, right? So it does require a little bit of math and a little bit of advanced thinking when you're at the grocery store, but it's really important to do. Okay, so that's 1, serving size. Okay, so number 2 nutrient that I want you to consider is saturated fat. So let me put into context where to find that. It's under total fat. So you'll see that fat is bolded, and then under fat, there'll be saturated fat and trans fat, but they're like indented in because they give you the total fat number and then they break it down into the different types of fat. So what are the different types of fat? We have unsaturated fat. That's the type of fat that's found in like olive oil or nuts or your avocado, really heart healthy types of fat that can lower your LDL cholesterol levels, which is awesome. Then we have saturated fat. Too much saturated fat can increase our LDL cholesterol levels. So we don't want too much of that. Where is it found? Mainly animal products and marbling of meat, anything that's solid at room temperature. So butter, for example, or maybe coconut oil. Those are all high in saturated fat. And then the last one is trans fat. So there's 2 types of trans fat. One's like a man-made trans fat, which is not very good for our cholesterol levels. It can lower our HDL, our healthy cholesterol, and it can increase our LDL or our bad cholesterol. So it's not something we want to consume a lot of. There's also a naturally occurring trans fat. So you'll see that mainly on dairy products. And that type of fat isn't as bad for our heart as that man-made type of fat. So those are the 3 types of fat you can see under the total fat. However, the government only says that food companies need to put saturated and trans fat on there. So they leave out the unsaturated. So when you total up the indented fat, it may not equal the amount of fat that's on the total amount of fat because it's missing the unsaturated fat there. And they just expect you to do the math and figure that out on yourself, on your own, which I'm sure you can do. But again, it's another step. So that being said, if the total fat is high, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. To look further, what type of fat is high? If it's saturated fat that's high, then maybe it may not be a heart healthy food. But if it's the unsaturated fat that's high, then perhaps it could be included in a heart healthy diet and it could help lower your LDL cholesterol levels. So that's nutrient number 2, is that we want to look at that saturated fat value. And the American Heart Association guidelines suggest limiting saturated fat to about 5 to 6% of your total calories for the day. So that's saturated fat, that's number 2. Now, number 3, what's the third nutrient we want to be looking at on those food labels? That is fiber. So I'm sure you're aware fiber is really good for our gut health. It helps to increase those healthy microbiomes and it reduces inflammation that way as well. But fiber can also lower our cholesterol levels. There are 2 different types of fiber in our food system. One's called insoluble fiber. That's like the bran. And then there's something called soluble fiber. And that is more like a sticky gel-like fiber. That soluble fiber, I guess you can find that in things like okra. You know how it's slimy when it's cooked. You can see the soluble fiber there. Oats are a really good example of that too. What else? Chia seeds have a bit. But anything that's like a gel-like, that's the soluble fiber, and that type of fiber can lower our cholesterol levels. Unfortunately, the label doesn't really tell us if it's soluble or if it's insoluble fiber, but just generally increasing our fiber amount can be extremely heart healthy and can help prevent a lot of chronic diseases as well as some types of cancer. Additionally, fiber can also keep us full longer and it helps with weight management, which is a risk factor for heart disease. So lots and lots of reasons why we should be consuming more fiber. Just to add one more, North Americans are not eating enough fiber. So we need to eat more to meet the recommended intakes so that we can prevent chronic diseases and different types of cancers. So in summary, what are we looking for? We're looking for serving size, and then we're looking at saturated fat, and then we're looking at fiber amounts. 1, 2, 3. I guess as a bonus for just to throw everything off, protein can also be important to look at. We need enough protein at each meal, generally speaking, about 20 to 30 grams per meal. And we know that eating more protein from plants can help us lower our cholesterol levels. So looking at that protein number, making sure that we are eating enough at mealtime can help lower cholesterol, but it also helps with satiety, blood sugar control, and that can help with risk factors for heart disease. Now, what shouldn't we look for? Now, remember I said calories? That is the number one thing my clients are looking at when they're reading food labels, calories. But I'm suggesting you don't even look at that. And that's because calories don't tell the whole story. It doesn't tell us if those calories are from saturated fat or if it's from fiber, right? Going further down the list, all those nutrients, it can tell us a better story about what that food is providing us for our health. So you can be on a low calorie diet and be eating very unhealthy foods. You could be on a low calorie diet and also eat healthy foods. But the point is the calories aren't telling us that information. It's the nutrients. So that's why I do not recommend looking at calories. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below what you think about that suggestion. Now, number 2 thing not to look at on a food label is dietary cholesterol. Another common thing my clients are looking at is the cholesterol found in foods. However, we know that the cholesterol that we eat, so dietary cholesterol, the cholesterol that's on the food labels, we know that that cholesterol doesn't necessarily increase our blood cholesterol levels, so our LDL cholesterol levels. About 30 years ago, yes, we did think that, but research has evolved since then. We've done so many more research trials to learn that that dietary cholesterol no longer is an impact to our blood cholesterol levels. Even the American Heart Association does not even mention it in their dietary guidelines because it's not something to focus on. So the third thing I want you to maybe not consider as much is trans fat. So before I mentioned, there's two types of trans fat. One is man-made and one is naturally present in some food products. The man-made trans fat has been banned in Canada, which is amazing. So if you're living in Canada and you see trans fat on a product, it's likely just the naturally occurring trans fat, and it's not going to lead to inflammation, lower our HDL, and increase our LDL cholesterol levels. So that's why I don't necessarily recommend looking at it, because the man-made trans fats that were causing us harm are no longer present in our food system, which is amazing. I'm so happy about that change. So just to summarize, on the food label, what we want to be looking at is a product that has more fiber, a product that has less saturated fat, and I want you to always consider the serving size. So we're keeping it simple. This is for individuals who are managing cholesterol levels. And of course, this is just general information. I'm not your dietitian, so make sure that if you have specific questions and you're following different diets for different chronic diseases, follow your dietitian and your dietitian tips. This is just general information here. Okay, and so I thought I'd just finish off with an example. So I brought two products here. One is protein oats from Bob's Red Mill, and the other one is just plain Cheerios. Okay, so you can see here, this plain Cheerios is very much marketed that it's a heart-healthy food. It has a heart on it. It says oat fiber helps lower cholesterol, which is true. My family makes my heart happy. Again, very heart-directed Cheerios in the shape of hearts. Okay, and then Bob's Red Mill. What are some? It says whole grain oats, but it doesn't really mention anything about cholesterol here. And then we flip it over and we look at the nutrition facts panel. So it says a serving size is about 1/3 of a cup, and a serving size for Cheerios is 1 cup. So we have to multiply this by 3 to just make sure the nutrients are the same. Okay. Then we go to the first nutrient, was saturated fat. So 1 cup has 0.4 grams of saturated fat. So that's low. So that's not something that would be increasing our LDL cholesterol levels, which is awesome. And then for this one, saturated fat for 1/3 of a cup is 1 gram. So you multiply that by 3 to make it 1 cup. And so it'd be 3 grams of saturated fat in the Bob's Red Mill. So 3 grams is probably about maybe like 30% of your intake, give or take. So it is a little bit on the higher saturated fat side, but definitely can be incorporated. It's in your budget for the day. Next on the nutrient facts panel is fiber. So let's look at fiber here. So for 1/3 of a cup, there's 6 grams. So if we multiply that by 3, that's 18 grams of fiber per serving. And then 1 cup here is 3 grams. So 18 grams or 3 grams. So they both contain that oat fiber, which was on this label. Oat fiber lowers cholesterol levels, because that is true. We know that in research. But how much oat fiber is in these products, right? 18 grams versus 3 grams. So big difference there. And that's why reading that food label gives you some idea. And then just for context, there's no trans fat in either of them, 0 grams. And then protein was the other kind of optional nutrient to look for cholesterol control. 1 cup here is 4 grams, and then 1 cup here would be 30 grams. So again, a lot more nutrients in the rolled oats than the Cheerios itself. This will definitely keep you full longer and provide a lot more nutrients. It is higher in saturated fat, right? It was 3 grams per 1 cup of oats, but typically like a portion is about half a cup. So you'd be having 1.5 grams of saturated fat, which is definitely within budget. So this is just a comparison here just to show you kind of how to walk you through those food labels and what to look for when you're managing cholesterol. Remember, this is just for educational purposes only. I'm not your dietitian. If you have questions or have comments, please leave them below. I'd love to interact and talk to you. So I hope this will help you when you're grocery shopping. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I upload a new heart healthy nutrition topic every week. See you next week.